you know, we would even, as a board, consider that change. Any other application, we would tell them to go back and come back with an integrated plan. If the liner building was being done 10 years from now, I would have no issue with it at all, but that's not the case.
But when you look at Willow, and you're absolutely right, and it's very troublesome to see an application like this, but when you look at the properties to the north, the vocabulary is a little more resemblance to what's been proposed in the line, and not what the Walmart, which is this could be for, you know, I could be in Maryville, Tennessee, and I could have a Walmart.
Absolutely.
Okay?
Absolutely.
Yeah, when you look at the retail fronting Midtown further to the north, it is closer to this proposal.
Then basically turn to Gensler or turn to Ciscoish and say you design the rest, but give us an integrated proposal, not this hodgepodge that is, I mean, this to me is almost like a comedy.
Because you're looking at it.
Only in Miami would you see something happen, you know, like this. I mean, if you had two different parcels of equal weight, but this is, I mean, what percentage of square footage in the entire project is liner building versus Walmart? I mean, I don't know, but I would assume it's less than 5%. And you have 5% dominating the second, or I guess second most important facade, because the other one is the main entrance on North Miami Avenue. So I mean, you know, it's just like.
But when you look at the North Miami Avenue, you see that they really have.
I know I'm not saying one is good and one is bad. I tend to I mean I like more the liner building architecturally personally, but I see what we're ending up with as
a contradiction.
You know, I mean, it's almost like if you ask for pasta and you get green pasta and white pasta, and it's all white pasta and you get two little strips of green pasta. Something is wrong there. Somebody made a mistake. It looks like if somebody make a mistake in the serving. And that's, you know, so.
Perhaps you would never experience the whole building at the same time, because the bottom is covered by another building, so the bottom does not exist, you know, the south. So the top is more or less the same as North Miami Avenue, but it does have the entrance to the parking, so it does have a little bit of it.
There's one area which is where the driveway goes in.
Yeah.
And there's where you see the issue. You see one side and the other one's stuck into it.
31st Street?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there you see, well, what happened here? So, because that happens to be an entrance, so I mean, it's an element of certain importance, even though it's mostly vehicular, or all vehicular.
Yeah, we all have the same feeling for this, but it's kind of a schizophrenic situation, you know.
In defense, a little bit with respect to the boulevard, there are 4 or 5 buildings on that particular boulevard that is designed by different architects, and one of the richness of the space in terms of its integration is that once you come on that boulevard, you're seeing Oppenheimer, which is a very, very straightforward modern building. Then you have another, who else did? All the buildings on that street have a different vocabulary.
Yeah, but Neil, it's true, but we're not talking about a different building. The concept of the liner is a component in a building. It's like saying the roof, or, you know, it's like saying a portico. It's not a separate, here, for some reason, unbeknownst to me, it's become its own building. We've looked at the prior application before us. They have liner buildings or liner concepts. This one, the liner has outgrown its own boundary to become its own separate project.
Separate architect too.
Separate architect, separate architectural statement, you know.
And separate contract.
And you absolutely see the joining of the two at that northeast corner. If you stand in the northeast corner and see both facades, you see one pasted up against the other.
And that's a good, pasted up as good as a description.
I would like to, I think, add a comment related to the length of the liner building and the effective landscape treatment of it. Is that it's 477 feet, 10 inches long, and there are 17 palm trees on that street, which seems to me, if I were trying to create a pedestrian zone on the east side of a building, I would be looking for more than 17 palm trees in 477 feet of 3-story tall building. Just comment. I don't know what the street tree requirement is, but certainly, I would look to get a little more shade onto that sidewalk than 17 palm trees.
They currently exist on that street, within these planters, about 17 palm trees on the farther east side. So I'm thinking that they basically mirrored what was on the other side of the street, because that is the vocabulary on that street right now. Palm trees.
I just want to add
17 palm trees.
And it's 17 palm trees on the other side as well?
I have not counted them, sir.
I just want to add
But do you think
something.
the spacing is the same?
The
Is it a
spacing
mirror image?
appears to be the same. Yeah.
One of the nice things that with a liner building is that the glass, the storefront goes all the way to the sidewalk. I like that. As opposed to the other side where you have this skirt. I don't know how high this looks, like 30 inches high or something. So you really have no visual, but I don't know, this psychological feeling that you can enter. You have to walk the entire block, except there's like the entrance to the stairs, the exit doors. So perhaps you could do something about reducing that. I was looking at your facade on North Miami Avenue, and this sheet A02-05. I don't know if there could be, see you have this continuous low ledge on the street here.
Yes.
Maybe some of them can go down all the way to the street. Maybe a little, I don't know, some other additional, you have tried to articulate your facade by going in and out, which is very nice, and changing some of your material, but you maintain that ledge continuous. So maybe something of that, maybe you can look at that.
Let me start on a question to a staff. There's a handful of items that, to me, don't seem to have been addressed or resolved. The maximum 40-foot entrance is a drive. That doesn't seem to have been addressed. It's still, what appears to be that they're still exceeding that, correct?
Yes, and there are conditions that they are working directly with our Public Works Department and our transportation staff in order to resolve those issues. There are obvious conflicts with their engineering standards.
That must be resolved first. I tell you, I have a tremendous problem with having a head and a tail that do not relate to one another. I think that, just to follow up a little bit of what Mr. Bermejo started saying, I do like the architecture on the liner unit more than what I would say corporate America facade. That one is fake. I look at the Miami Avenue facade and I can see more than 60, 70% you have either stairs, retail support that you stated that it's going to be back of house. No articulation, really, no pedestrian-friendly opportunities. We know that you do have, in Walmart, you have the small little shops within the store that those could open up to Miami Avenue, incorporate And we're not. You're saying, you know, it is what it is. Not only you have the storefront don't come to the ground, I have a storefront that is on the parking garage just as it was a window to, you know, Main Street Disney, which I don't think plays any role here. I think I much rather see the articulation that the liner unit have taken. They set the glass back a little bit. They have a 2-3-story open arcade. At least give me some layering there. The vocabulary of that is, to me, is more, again, like I mentioned before, more compatible to what Midtown Miami. I do think that the Miami Avenue elevation must be re-studied completely. I don't think it's acceptable to put your bathrooms, your back of house on that facade. You have ignored, you know, for the most part, with the exception of a little corner piece and a little bit on the backside, that is it. I think that's it's a mistake, and we should not accept that as a solution. I think that, I don't know how the board feels, I think that there should be more direct correlation between the east and the west, and the north, for that matter. And I don't know if I could make a motion here, but maybe that, you know, a suggestion is that we send the applicant back and come back to us with a better integrated project that the head and the tail of the dog are working. And if you're scratching, like you said, you're scratching your right hand side of the head, it's the same as your left. That's my feeling.
May I make a comment? Since my building faces that elevation, I am not necessarily opposed to the articulation of North Miami Avenue. I think it works with the overall streetscape. I think it's an interesting comment with respect to how do you, one of the complaints against Walmart has been destroying small stores within the area, and that there will be a sucking sound. So the idea of having an entrance coming off of North Miami to a store within Walmart, though it may break the mold of what Walmart is perceived to be, I think is a very interesting idea, that you can still have this linear space that have a store within Walmart, reinforcing the idea that we are still maintaining this small store concept within the larger concept. I think that's an interesting point that Mr. Beja raised, and whether or not that could be whether or not that can be incorporated into the corporate structure would be something that the community would react to in a positive way. With respect also to the liner, one of the things with Midtown is that as there's always been a magnet in Midtown, the magnet being Target, and everyone moves as a destination to Target. And whatever stores were on the south, you didn't get a pass. They just pass through and go to a destination. To have the south being articulated as a interesting spot to be, it will probably reverse and eventually have the entire Midtown a space of intrigue, which we're seeing right now, which I think it could be an interesting spot where we have the large pool area around West Elm, which is an interesting community space, and then having the liner space as a draw. I think when you look at Art Walk coming on 29th Avenue, I think it's an interesting thing to have as a new spot. So I'm beginning to feel that if one look at the overall tenor of the space, and how do you break up the space into spots for people to congregate and to take hold of, maybe the idea can work.
Members of the board, if I could respond to your question, we would really appreciate a decision by the board to move this forward. We've been working for 2 years on this project. We take your comments very seriously. In fact, we're working with staff right now on curing some of those issues that you've raised in regards to the activation of North Miami. We would urge you to think through the fact that nowhere else in North Miami has this occurred. We're going to be the first to do this. If you go from Target on down, North Miami is not activated in rare spots. Certainly, we would be undertaking much more of an effort to do that than anyone else. And we're willing to do it, and we're working with staff to accomplish that, but we seriously need to move the project along. In terms of the design of the project, we've been working with people that at first were objecting to our project, and we've gotten them to the point of talking with us about solutions, and that's why we have the project that we have before you. We will take seriously what you said and try to articulate some of that concept into what we're doing, including the, but you mentioned landscaping. Landscaping is something that we've made sure that stays the same as it was there before. We can address that issue for you if you want. And we're working with the rooftop and coverings with staff, and we'll continue to do so before the director has to issue a decision on this.
I personally think that, you know, and I hear you're afraid, or I think, you know, I just feel that there's so much needed to be done and to come into a sense of organization between the two areas that I personally do not feel comfortable saying, sure, go on, and work out with staff. I think that this requires, at least from my perspective, a little bit more work. But again, we got 5 members here today, you know, like to hear their opinion.
Mr. Chairman, I'm 100% with you, and I've known Alfredo for many years, and he's an excellent attorney. But the modifications, at least that it would require for me to have my vote of support, are substantial but rather easy to do. And let me explain why I say that. And they come down to basically three areas. One is North Miami Avenue. All that retail support, I think, is just a nice name to make it sound like retail, but we know it's not retail. It's really back of house. So let's call it by what it is.
They fooled me.
And all of that back of house, and they put the same color, so it looks like a deeper blue, you know. But all that back of house could be consolidated with other areas that are back of house of Walmart in the area of proximity of the loading and unloading area. So redesigning that portion of the interior to make North Miami as transparent as possible, and if you go to that plan where you take the deep blue and just relocate it to a different area that doesn't block North Miami, that's one way to address it. There may be others. Second is the area that we already showed their traffic engineer in terms of making that service driveway on the second level work. And third is to have a fully integrated design solution come before this board. As far as the drawings, it means a reworking of what we have before us. And they're significant enough that I would like for this board to see that and not just say, well, just do it and show it to staff, because then we don't know really what we approved. But having said that, all the changes that at least I mentioned, and there may be others, my colleagues, I think could be done very, very quickly and would not be an unreasonable delay. And in my opinion, they're a reasonable request. But I have an issue giving a line of endorsement in what we're shown. I think staff was candid and being very diplomatic in terms of the question that she answered earlier regarding North Miami Avenue. Well, those are my three areas. And I do agree with you in terms of the architectural design of the liner building. But I also can understand Neil's thought process. My point is, and I'm not trying to design it for the client or the two clients, how many clients there may be, is come up with one design proposal that gives a consolidated whole to the project.
If I may, during our review of the project, we also had expressed concern about what seems to be the back of house and what actually is the back of house function on North Miami Avenue. The response that we received from the applicant was basically that the way that their store is laid out, the space that they have available, necessitated the location of those areas along that edge. The architects are here, they can speak to that with greater detail. But that is the reason that was given to us. As far as the activation on North Miami Avenue, that is something that we have systematically told them from the very, very beginning. And actually is required by the code. Anytime that they have a different use, if you look at if we can go back to squares, because they do kind of have them in the same color. Along North Miami Avenue, this area in here is supposed to be an optical store, an optician of some kind. Yes. That requires, the code requires for them to actually have a separate entrance. And there's our comment is there. We wanted to see more along the lines of what they have done in other Walmarts, whereas they have, whether it's a Starbucks or a cafe, whatever it may be, but it has the feel of a separate store within the greater. So we had a comment about that. We also have concerns about the stairwells and some of the other areas that we see there. But I would defer to them to actually explain why it is that you have to have it that way and explain that to the board.
I personally don't think I need their explanation. This is a prototypical store that they're trying to put into the site. And with all the respect, I really don't think if Walmart wants, in my opinion, if Walmart wants to be here, I think they could do away with the prototypical and then be able to comply. But, listen, I think that we should, and really, I hear you, and I know Alberto too, and I think he's a great attorney, but I think that this may not be something that an attorney can resolve, but, No,
I think it has to come back to us. What I'm saying is, architecturally, the store planners can go back to a drawing board and address our concerns. And sometimes it's tough for staff to say this, but I think this is our role to kind of put down the gauntlet and say, to get our recommendation for approval, you're going to have to do X, Y, and Z to have an affirmative vote or majority vote. And definitely, I think in my opinion, and I think we're both looking at it the same way, this would have to come back to us to illustrate that these changes have in fact been made. I think that takes the leverage and pressure off of you.
Jerry, how you feel about it?
I'm in agreement. I'd like to see far more cooperation in the facades between the two solutions, and to activate North Miami Avenue. I'm hearing maybe conflicting things. As if the dark blue on North Miami is separate functions that are Walmart functions, like an optical store and a coffee shop and a whatever, and so that from North Miami Avenue, that there's an entrance on North Miami Avenue and it looks like a separate shop. Maybe that's the kind of articulation that we're looking for, in which case the plan doesn't tell us that.
As a matter of fact,
and that's what we've requested.
I asked the architect to define for me what retail support was, and his response would be the definition of back of house. In any, I don't care what.
But if you look at it closer, there's bathrooms showing there. So,
which is fine. The restroom is back of house. And you got to put them someplace, but they don't have to be.
They don't have to be
the edge.
Well, one of the areas we are looking at is on your screens right now. This box is where the Vision Center is, and treating that as a separate entrance to the project. Also, at the northwest corner of Northeast 31st Street, Every Walmart has a Subway or a McDonald's or some sort of restaurant component, and that is what this box is.
What drawing is that here?
That would be on the A101.
That's not what that shows.
Oh,
The
this
grade.
actual.
Yeah, the grade goes up blue.
This plan's being developed as a part of the answering and addressing comments from staff. This plan's going to show up as we resubmit the comments. So on the A0101, at the northwest corner, that box next to the main entrance is a retail tenant, yet to be determined in that corner. The rectangle box in the dark blue halfway down North Miami Avenue is the Vision Center.
Which one? There?
But those are two little spaces.
Correct.
Okay, look, I think that so far, and let me ask staff a question. Right now, out of 5 board members, seems like 3 feel that this rule need to come back. They have an option to continue moving. We could get, I imagine, and we'll vote on it, a vote of, negative recommendation, I guess, right? And they could continue on, or they could come back to us. Can you clarify that for me, please?
I think there's a time issue here at play, and they needed to move the application forward. As you can see, they've started already to work on some of the comments, which mirror what you have said, maybe a little more diplomatically, as Mr. Romeo has mentioned, but certainly along the same lines. We do have the concerns along Miami Avenue. We have the concerns on 31st Street. So, but there is a sensitivity to time, and that's what's really driving the application with the speed that it's coming. I would defer to the client and see what they want to do. If they want to walk away from this board with your comments as they are today, or if they would like to come back with a refined product.
Mr. Chairman, may I make one point? My name is...
Before you go, please.
Oh.
The one comment that was, I think, the board felt strongly about, which is not addressed in your comments, is the integration of the facade treatment. And I think that's, I mean, it certainly would be easy for us to say, well, as long as you have all kinds of retail kind of liner spaces from Walmart along North Miami Avenue, certainly you can take care of that, kind of as a functional piece. But I think we're asking, and I think it's what our role is as the Urban Design Review Board, to in fact assure that there is that kind of coordination, and that we do look like we are at least kissing cousins as we go around the corner.
Absolutely.
That's actually a fairly good transition to what I wanted to say. My name is Richard Perez. I represent Midtown Opportunities, who's the owner of all of the remaining undeveloped parcels at Midtown, but for the Walmart site. We're also the ones that will be ultimately the owners and developers of this liner project. And let me give you some perspective exactly on this integrated design, which is exactly what we didn't want to accomplish, because we didn't want the experience on Midtown Boulevard to look and feel like Walmart. And that's why you see the end result. And I certainly can't speak to the technical aspects of how that project works together. But in terms of the experience.
You own the property that's sold to Walmart?
No, we don't own the property that was sold to Walmart. DDR owns that property. We own all of the other property that is undeveloped within the Midtown project. And so that has been something that's been very important to my client, that experience, that pedestrian, especially the pedestrian experience along Midtown Boulevard, not have the same look and feel as Walmart. And for people not to come on that pedestrian experience on Midtown, which we think that could be a signature block for Miami, a signature block for the area, to look and feel like Walmart. They wanted something different. They wanted something that was a homage to what the community was and will be, and the experience of being there. And so that's what they asked Ziskovich to design. And although we hear you that there may be technical aspects that should be dealt with or as this process moves along, that what my client believes that community would want, and certainly what we've heard from the community, because we were first opposed to this project, frankly, is something that isn't a Walmart feel on that Midtown Boulevard. And so as you go along with your comments, I just wanted to express that in terms of the point of view of our client and what we believe is the right feel for Midtown Boulevard. And we do believe that this Siskevich design gives it that feel, that differentness, that a different aspect of just walking up and thinking that this is the back end of a Walmart store. Thank you.
May I ask a question? Is there another board meeting? We have some time constraints in terms of our contractual obligations and things like that, and we are addressing everything with the city. We've taken your comments to heart, and we'll try to address them as well, even though there is going to be some difference between our side and the other. Maybe we can do some designing work that helps that. I know we're going to be taking care of the activation of North Miami, which no one else has in the road, but we will. If you could move this along, even if it's at deferral to the very next meeting for us to get you a little bit more comfort in terms of the project.
Mr. Chair, the regularly scheduled meeting date would have been February 20th. We still have the chambers. It's up to the board to see if they want to meet again at that time.
If that gives you enough time to come back, and let me ask, the present board members, do you have an issue with, you said February 20th?
Yes. 20th, the same time.
Regular meeting of February.
Fine.
Neil?
Not an issue for me.
Anthony? I'm okay. How about you, Willie?
Gonna check right
There is
now.
some kind of a continuing education. I don't know when it is.
That's
The 10th.
When is it?
15, 16, huh? February 20th?
The AIA two-day affair or something. I think it's Saturday.
Yeah, I'm fine. I already have it here.
So we could do a certain on
Absolutely.
the 20th. That gives you a couple weeks to make some modification. And don't take me wrong. I personally don't want to be, exactly as you have, the liner unit, but somehow be more compatible to that. I think that personally I'm not looking to be identical to the liner, but I think there should be some vocabulary, that are more compatible.
We hear you. Thank you very much for it.
Mr. Bejar, if I may interrupt you for a second, are you saying that the elevation on North Miami should, in fact, respond to the liner architecture?
Not necessarily, but what I'm saying is that, just by the pure fact that you're gonna make different articulation, you're gonna bring more glass to the floor, to the ground, because you are going to try to articulate that, where you may have some stores that do open up, and you are going to be more compatible.
The facade on North Miami Avenue is reflective of what's Walmart is there at this moment. Changing that accentuates the idea that this is a Walmart, and I think it's important that from 36th Street all the way to 29th Street begin to look like a complete development. And I strongly believe that some of the articulation that is happening now on North Miami Avenue works. I do believe that we should have some openings on North Miami Avenue that reflects the smallness of stores within. So the bathroom, I think, can be placed on the Pike side, which is the south side of, which is the blank wall that you have. You've already placed the stairs that is responding to the parking garage, and I'm not sure why it all had to be on the exterior, but otherwise it would be falling somewhere in the store itself. So the only other areas that we see is close to probably about 200 feet of work that could go on the south side. And I don't see that's a big deal to move around. That's the back of the store.
My response to that would be that it has a lot to do not only with the architects, but with the layout architects at Walmart that study the positioning of where these bathrooms are supposed to be. So we will do our best, but assuming we don't do that, we've taken you to heart in terms of the more active uses, the more glass in the area, and the more the desire to have the projects be a little bit more like each other, even though they are going to be distinct, because some of our objectors are asking that they be distinct.
Yes.
Could I address the facade issue for just a moment? If in fact the western facade is beginning to complete a reasonable pattern on North Miami Avenue, okay, that would like to maintain that, and if the new liner building on Midtown Boulevard is to be unique, and we've kind of heard that as destination unique, that it seems to me that the one place where we see the seam between them is if we're standing at the corner of Midtown Boulevard and 31st Street and looking at the corner. And that in fact maybe the facade treatment that would be more compatible would be that 31st Street be a transitional facade, that in fact the liner building, some idea from the liner building can come around the corner and go down 31st Street, so that in fact if this is liner building and this is 31st Street, that or North Miami Avenue, that 31st Street is some integration of the two, so there's not that abrupt line of, you know, here's one and here's the other, so that we could avoid that pasted on, as I said, the pasted on idea.
Right, right.
That gives.
So we're going to take.
So we make there's a motion to defer to the February 20?
With changes, or with another addressing the corner, I think could be something that we would accept.
Well, with all, addressing all of the conditions.
There is a list,
Enough said.
there is a list of comments.
Okay. So,
Yeah,
need the motion.
you can summarize and you can do Mr. Bermejo's 3 comments, I think. One is this integration of the facades between the liner buildings and the,
And you just gave them a little more details to how to do it.
okay?
Right.
The
North Miami Avenue.
The North Miami Avenue in terms of storefront and its
I'm sorry, we disagree with integrating it. The whole intent of the project is that you end up almost with 2 separate buildings in the block. That is what was the intent. Now, how, I think integrating it is not really what we're after.
But it's what we're after. I mean, you're missing the point. We're the advisory board.
We're not really looking at it from the architectural.
You came with an appendage that is the tail wagging this huge project. And that, you know, at least that's not going to fly with me. I mean, if Walmart wants to continue and do the entire vocabulary of the project in terms of what you started, great. If they want to change and you change, great. I mean, I'm speaking now for me. I mean, if it comes back the way you have it, I mean, you're going to get a resounding, hard, abrasive no. You want that? Fine. I mean, that's what you're going to get, at least from me.
Mr. Mayor, so we can have just clear direction. I think what we heard over here was that there needed to be some detailing on that, where the 2 buildings sort of meet, and make sure that there's a real demarcation.
That's not what he said. They meet at a line. And right now, it's like, it's an expansion joint between 2 projects that were done in time for some different reason. What he said is use 31st Street as the area, as the layer where you integrate the 2 in some, he's not telling you how to do it.
No, I just want to get clear direction. That's all I.
We don't have a drawing that shows us what 31st Street looks like.
Right, and so,
I mean, we've got wonderful architectural renderings of Midtown and North Miami Avenue, but I don't know how they go together. And if I'm looking at the two elevations, they don't go together. And you're telling me that that's intentional, but I want to see what it looks like when they touch.
understood.
One unfortunate thing with this elevation is that the two buildings are exactly the same height. And I think if you could personally, and I don't mean to add another dimension to this proceedings of this board, but personally, I don't mind the difference in architecture. And I think that I can justify a different architecture for the liner, a different architecture for the thing, but there are issues affecting each architecture and each building separately. For example, if you want to do that, why not change the height of the building so that they don't match exactly at the same height? Make that building a little taller or a little shorter. Make that facade a little bit more diverse so that this distinction between the two architectures is not so abrupt. There is a beauty about having a different architecture on the street. You know, old towns were like this, where you can see the historical development of the city, and sometimes we wanted to repeat that feeling on a street, and there is some validity in making some different architecture. And I don't mean to differ from the rest of the board. I think I share a lot of the feelings, but there are some ways of addressing this that are feasible from a design point of view. I think that you're missing some, you made some design decisions that forces this board to be negative. And those issues have to do with architecture, have to do with proportions, have to do with the way this relates to that. It is not a correct way that these two elements are like that. So the other thing that I'd like to see is some kind of improve the connectivity between the parking and the liner building. It's very difficult to go to a lot of these people who want to cater to these stores will have a hard time parking and getting down. They only have two stairs. One is on the, I forget the orientation, on this stair and that stair are serving these stores, and very little is serving this end here. I would also rotate this stair so that it's the other way around, so that you have less exposure to that street. I don't understand what this courtyard is. It has to be improved. This courtyard is kind of dead, and I don't understand this space. So there are, in my judgment, there are ways for you to address these issues, and they're very specific. Improve the facade on North Miami Avenue by making it a little bit less corporate and more pedestrian-oriented. Improve the connectivity of the parking to this, and improve some work with that differentiation between the two architectures. That's my point of view.
Do we need a motion or?
Let's make a motion.
It's a motion to defer, no?
To defer to February
We
20th?
have a motion, we have a,
Who moved?
somebody wants to make?
Based on the comments provided by Ms. Romeo as modified.
Based
Is
on the
that-
comment you heard,
Of everyone,
okay?
okay,
So
very good.
I guess I'll make the motion to defer to February 20th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye,
And to incorporate our comments.
yes.
Yes,
Okay, thank you. We'll see you.
Thank you.
then.
Thank you.
thank you.
Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.